sometimes how you can come to discover bands. I mean, you could discover them because you saw them live as a support act and are blown away by their sound, or perhaps a friend told you that you just have to hear them, or maybe even you read or watched an album review and they just sounded like your type of thing. Though, how I don't often discover bands is through happening to watch them on television at a festival that I have no interest in watching. I just happened to switch on the telly and there happened to be Tea in the Park festival. I think it was that festival, and I thought I'd watch it for 5 minutes, see what probably crappy acts they'd have on, as Tea in the Park really doesn't have many bands that I'm particularly into. And so this band I've never heard of called Royal Blood comes on, and I see come out just this bassist and drummer, and that's it. And then I thought, okay, you know, I'll listen to their first song, and I ended up listening to their whole set because they quite simply blew me away. Straight afterwards, I went on Spotify, listened to their singles, and the whole band really took my breath away. From nowhere, this debut release by a band I'd never heard of before became one of my most anticipated albums of 2014. And I'll tell you this now, it certainly lives up to expectations. Royal Blood truly do deliver one of the most exciting albums of the year. I mean, really, the opener, Out of the Black, that is their mission statement. This is the song that tells you to take note of the band, to bow to the altar. That is a two-piece from Brighton in the UK. The thick, thunderous bass sounds of this riff from Mike Kerr and the heavy, pounding drums from Ben Thatcher remind me instantly of Queens of the Stone Age, particularly the earlier work and their self-titled debut, as this band gets heavy at times, but they're not a metal band in the same way that Queens of the Stone Age go sometimes into the more metal realm. No, they keep everything in sort of a hard rock bass, particularly because of the bass. I mean, this big, thick bass sound really gives them a very heavy, distorted, fuzzy tone. And Mike just then delivers these powerful, passionate, almost aggressive vocal performances. You really just get swept into the constant groove these guys managed to lay down. I mean, I thought ZZ Top were the kings of just grooving, but damn, Royal Blood certainly rivaled them with their never-ending grooves, particularly on this track. Especially as this has more of an aggressive nature to it, and this really is just one of the best rock songs of the year. You have to check this one out. And then with track 2, Come On Over, we just get yet another killer groove as the bass and instrumentation remains quieter in the verse before exploding along the vocals and the chorus as Mike screams, "If there's no God, then I don't really care." I mean, seriously, all you think through this track is, how the fuck is that a bass? And what magic does he use to create that sound, which is just like unlike any ever I've heard. I mean, my theory is maybe like Robert Johnson, he found a crossroads and sold his soul to the devil in exchange for that tone, because let me tell you, after hearing that tone, it is a very worthwhile trade to make. Yet another highlight of this album. Did I say that Out of the Black was one of the best songs of the year? Yeah, well, Figure It Out is even better. Yeah, the bass here, it's a little less distorted, there's sort of a lighter guitar sound to it throughout, and this maybe doesn't assault your ears in the same way that the first track did. And still, this is a groove-laden song with a very strong vocal performance and a killer melody in the chorus, seriously catchy chorus that just keeps going round and round in my head. Though where this song really takes off is in the final part, which opens with a bass solo that you could swear was a guitar solo, but yet at the same time doesn't sound like a guitar solo, but yeah, as it just sounds heavier and heavier towards this crescendoing sort of Zeppelin-like finale. I can certainly understand why Jimmy Page is a fan. Though You Can Be So Cruel is a little different to the songs before. This really, I believe, is Mike Kerr's homage to Queens of the Stone Age. I mean, he's named them as a very big influence on his writing, and there's a lot of similarities with the general way that Josh Homme of Queens of the Stone Age constructs his songs with how this is constructed. This has this type of circular riff going with it, combined with a chorus that vocally seems to mimic that sort of succubus crow and that Josh Homme is known for. And yet also Home has a very sort of a delicate yet vulnerable voice, which I think Kerr manages to pull off very well. Now that doesn't mean I'm saying this is plagiarism. I'm not saying that they've unoriginally copied Queens of the Stone Age. I'm just saying that they've clearly taken influence from it, added their own royal blood spin to the formula, particularly with how the fact there's no guitars, just bass. And as a fan of Home and Queens of the Stone Age, I think Mike Kerr really does very well creating this song. It continues the streak of brilliance in this album. Blood Hands sort of comes halfway through the album. This feels like more of a tender song than the ones we've had before, with Kerr betraying a sense of guilt with the blood on his hands, particularly at the beginning of the song. It reminds me almost vocally of Jack White, and again the White Stripes are another clear influence to the band, and the sort of Jack White's trademark sound seems to pervade the album, though again, not to discredit Royal Blood as a clone of the Stripes, they really aren't. At the end of the day, the only way you can describe Royal Blood's sound is sounding like Royal Blood. But for those of you who don't know the band, I'm just doing my best to try and point out some similarities to their music, so if you like that type of style, you might check these guys out, so they really are worth checking out. And something I haven't commented on which really needs to be talked about is Ben Thatcher's drumming. His drumming has this sort of animalistic lead drumming feel to it, and almost seems similar to the lost art of Keith Moon and John Bonham style drumming, in which you attempt to just dominate the song with powerful, hard-hitting drums that do more than simply stay with the beat, but almost try and, well, act like a lead instrument. And I think it's one of the things that really helps to keep this album fresh and interesting throughout is the beats by Ben. Very good. And this song, yeah, this really is just a massively written song. But though it's one of the less immediate songs on the album, maybe one of the closest to a ballad you'll get, as it's definitely a little softer, a little less groove orientated, and particularly with the use of dynamics, which really stands out about the songwriting here. They just go louder when needed, stay softer when appropriate, and I mean, don't get me wrong, this song has its rock-out riff moments, but it's just the balance of restraint and all that bass riffs that make this so captivating. Though I would say the endings may be a little abrupt if I was going to really nitpick. Oh, Little Monster, one of the very first songs of theirs I heard, and certainly probably one of the songs I've been listening to the most that they released before the album came out. It definitely makes sense as a single. Yeah, it's one of the more simplistic songs on the record, one of the more accessible, with a very catchy chorus, but it's just an anthem and a half. You can't help but get carried away with the powerful riffs and the chorus to die for. But what really stands out to me is the simple yet geniusly effective guitar solo that seems to take from the school of Jack White in that sense. It's not much more than just a series of notes and descending bass line before each set of notes, but it just works and provides a real break in the song and just adds that, again, it just pushes it beyond the boundaries of just an ordinary garage rock song. Loose Change, with its classic rock, well, classic sort of blues rock feel to it, and built around a fairly simple riff. And at this point, I think it's worth pointing out the strong production. That's one of the things I was most worried about before hearing this album, as I was concerned that maybe a producer might take the sort of the life, the energy out of this band, but no, the bass tone sounds raw and wild, with distortion running rampant throughout the record. Drums have that big sound to it as needed on an album like that, and there's very few overdubs, which I have to give Kerr and Thatcher credit for doing. Much of this seems like it was done in continuous takes, and that really adds to the live, natural feel that they get. And really, the production here just accentuates the visceral, punch-to-the-face wall of sound these guys deliver. And with this track, Loose Change, I found the lyrics to be a particular highlight. They have a simplicity to them, yet like much of the album, I find them effective. And I have a feeling there's a little Zeppelin reference in that all that glitters gold till the glitter gets sold and the money don't fold. I think the all that glitters is gold, you know, stay away. Though Careless and Tonne Skeleton, I have to say, I find them the slightly weaker part of the album. Careless really is just a song that I don't particularly care about. The riff is more focused around some higher, very guitar-sounding riffs, which I do kind of like, but the song just doesn't strike me in the same way, and I find the chorus to be less memorable. While Tonne Skeleton, almost reminiscent of Alien Muse with the opening bass line and, again, higher pitches used, I just don't find the riff grabs me in the same way as a song like Figure You Out, and again the chorus isn't quite as strong. though lyrically it very much continues the theme of breakups and death of relationships. I mean, with a lyric like "Love has been here and gone." And I found the bridge to be an interesting component to the song, with its atmospheric sounding reverberated vocals. In general, I don't find these capture me quite as much as the songs before, though I still find a lot of enjoyment, particularly in Tonne Skeleton. Just, again, this album really is so strong. This is more of a nitpick. The last track, Better Strangers, this closes the very short album, and this album really is only 32 minutes. It certainly doesn't outstay its welcome. And with an ending like this, as Mike's soulful voice sings in a reflective manner about the emptiness he feels as he's hollow, this track ends the album, and with what you'd come to expect by this stage, which is some killer grooves and an interestingly played solo. This is just highly melodic and a perfect closer for the record. I mean, this album was just such a surprise of the year, and a really wonderful surprise, creating one of the most exciting releases of the year from one of the most promising bands. My main complaint with the album is with the slight weakness of Careless and 10 Tonne, and I do feel the album was a little short at 32 minutes. Still, I'm going to award this album an 8.75 out of 10. This is one that's going to keep me listening throughout the year, and at times this is just one of the best rock albums I've heard of the year. And some of these songs, as I said, these really are some of the best songs out of the black. Come On Over, Figure It Out, Little Monster are just amazing. Though what I do worry about is maybe their follow-up, and whether they'll find that whole sort of just drum and bass shtick to be limiting musically in the future, and that their albums could end up sounding quite samey. I do wonder how they're going to manage to keep things fresh and interesting in the future, though if this album is anything to go by, I genuinely think they'll find a way. This has been TheAIbumMan. Thanks for watching, comment, subscribe, and as usual, long live rock and roll.